We're not waking up Monday morning with a wild card spot, but at least the D-backs split the series against the San Diego Padres.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. So please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. Our goal is to hit 2,000 subs by the All-Star break. So once again, please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. On today's podcast, we'll talk about that D-backs versus San Diego Padres series. We'll talk about some of the latest Fanduel odds pertaining to the D-backs, and we'll take a look at the panic meter after another week of games. Today's episode is actually brought to you by Fanduel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, let's get into the podcast and let's talk about that D-backs versus Padres series, because we want to wake up Monday morning with the D-backs in a wild card spot, potentially the second wild card spot. If they took 3 out of 4 from the Padres, it would have at least set up for the D-backs to do that. They take 2 out of 3 from the Giants, and then they split against the San Diego Padres, which, to be honest, I'm happy with, because they win the first game and then they come back the next 2 games, games 2 and game 3, look absolutely horrendous. Those 2 games, lose 10-3 in game 2, lose 13-1 in game number 3. The D-backs just had awful showings in both of those games. You're wondering if they were just going to win one game in this series, as the D-backs love to do in their finales. They put on a big offensive showcase. The D-backs score 9 runs to the Padres 3 and are able to salvage the series and split it against the Padres. Like we said, entering the series, we really felt like the D-backs were equal to the San Diego Padres, right? We felt like there was a lot of parallels. I think leaving that series, we feel even more comparable to the Padres. We really feel like we're on the same level right now. D-backs, of course, coming off the great season last year, but 60 plus games into 2024. You have to put 2023 behind you. You have to look at the team that you have now, how they're playing, and against the San Diego Padres, it feels like those two teams are evenly matched. Both of them have injuries in their rotations and question marks in their lineup. But as Fernando Tatis is starting to heat up for the San Diego Padres, as he had himself a huge series against the D-backs. He was phenomenal. He had a hit in every game, some power as well. Fernando Tatis was very good against the D-backs this series. But as the Padres are starting to see their star heat up, are the D-backs starting to see their own star heat up in a Corbin Carroll? He is starting to play a little bit better, and it has to make you feel not good yet as D-backs fans, but make you feel at least hopeful that Corbin Carroll, that there's still enough time in the season for him to turn it around and still put up some decent numbers on the year. Is he going to finish as an MVP candidate this year? Probably not, but can he still salvage his season and maybe go on a Julio Rodriguez-esque run, where Julio Rodriguez last year, if you look at the numbers in the first half, really struggled for most of the season. Then all of a sudden, Julio Rodriguez, the last, 2.5 months of the season, just became one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball and just crushed it day after day in the second half of the season after starting the year really, really slow. Maybe Corbin Carroll can do some of the same this year for the D-backs. Take a page out of the J-Rod playbook, because it felt like he had a disappointing sophomore campaign after a phenomenal rookie year. Corbin Carroll going through the same struggles. If you look at the numbers for Julio Rodriguez in 2023, I mean, in the month of June last year, he had a 220 average and a 621 OPS. In the first half last season, 249 average, 721 OPS. So not as bad as Corbin Carroll is right now in the first half of the season. Still a few weeks before the All-Star break. So Corbin Carroll, there's still potential. Maybe he can't get to 249 average, 721 OPS. Maybe that's too much for him, but he could definitely get to like a 235 average and a 680 OPS. And then if he can have this type of second half that Julio Rodriguez had, then your numbers can still look like all-star level numbers by the end of the year. Julio Rodriguez in the second half of the season, 308 average, 941 OPS. That was in 68 games. So on the season, Julio Rodriguez's final numbers was a 275 average and over an 800 OPS. He still ended the season with all-star numbers. Corbin Carroll right now looks like one of the worst players in Major League Baseball. But if he can heat up to the level that Julio Rodriguez did in the second half, he can still finish the year with at least close to all-star level numbers. He's starting to swing the bat better recently, had himself a good game in the finale with a couple hits, and had himself a good game in the opener against the San Diego Padres. 5 hits in between those two games, and it's not surprised the D-backs won both of those games. Corbin Carroll is, of course, so vital to this D-backs offense, and without him, this offense really isn't going to go anywhere. Prior to Sunday's game, Corbin Carroll in his last 13 games was 12 for 47, so a 255 average, a 692 OPS. Again, those aren't elite numbers, but at least showing you that there are signs of life for Corbin Carroll. Then with the 2 more hits Sunday, that means he's probably got like a 260 average over his last 14 games. So he's starting to play better. Lourdes Gurriel as well. He's someone that has been struggling, of course, most of the season. He's starting to play better as well, just like a Corbin Carroll. 2 of the pillars in this D-backs offense starting to show signs of life. Lourdes Gurriel in his last 13, or excuse me, in his last 12 games, entering Sunday, 267 average, 787 OPS. And of course, Sunday, Lourdes Gurriel, 2 more hits, so you can raise his average over his last 13 games as well. Both of those guys starting to play better with the consistency that you're seeing from Ketel Marte and Walker still doing Christian Walker things. Jake McCarthy really starting to find his bat once again and also add in some power into his swing as we saw a big home run on Sunday. You can see this D-backs offense finally starting to show signs of life. I think it started against the Los Angeles Dodgers, and ever since then, maybe the D-backs don't always score 5 more runs, but they're at least putting together strings of hits and creating opportunities for themselves. And they're also striking out a lot less. When the D-backs are able to get a ton of hits and not strike out, that's when they're absolute best. 9 hits, 5 strikeouts in game 1 in their victory over the Padres. In the finale, 15 hits to 6 strikeouts. Whenever the D-backs get a ton of hits and a few strikeouts, that is when their offense is at the absolute best. Plus, when Carroll and Gurriel also swing the bat well, also bodes well for the D-backs offense, of course. And then from a pitching perspective, I mean, D-backs pitchers are down bad. Not surprised to see Ryan Nelson get crushed in game 2. I actually went to that game. Ryan Nelson was awful for the D-backs, but or not Ryan Nelson. Brandon Pfaadt was awful in the game that I went to. Ryan Nelson was awful in game number 3. Both of them was bad. Not surprised that Ryan Nelson was terrible, though. We are off the Ryan Nelson bandwagon in a big way. Pitching overall in the series was not very good. Disappointed to see Brandon Pfaadt. Humberto Castellanos was terrible. He already got sent back down to the minors. I think we're already over the Scott McGough experience. Like what I learned from a pitching perspective in this series, McGough, Vieira, Hughes, Allen, all of them are terrible. Ryan Nelson, he's bad. Brandon Pfaadt, he's been struggling recently. We need to get him back on track, but the back end of the bullpen is really an issue. Trying to figure out your like 6, 7, 8, 9 in the back end of your bullpen has been really hard for the D-backs. You did close with your best 5 on Sunday. Ginkle, Mansupply, Martinez, Ryan Thompson, Bryce Jarvis. That is your most trusted 5 right now. D-backs could use another reliever in the pen because the other 3 to 4 are absolutely terrible, whoever they are. And the question is, after game number three's performance, should Pavin Smith be moved to the bullpen because he had himself a debut, 0 ERAs? Of course, I'm kidding, but looked really good actually. He didn't look good, but fun to see Pavin Smith on the mound. And with zeros on the ERA, he's kind of one of the best D-backs relievers, which is sad to see. D-backs salvaged the series against the San Diego Padres. Did we learn anything? Not really. We knew the D-backs were basically on the Padres level. They came out with the series split. D-backs didn't really move up in the standings either. Still 1 game back of a wild card spot. But hey, at least it feels like the offense, Corbin Carroll, and Lourdes Gurriel are all trending in the right direction. Now, I want to talk about the latest FanDuel odds surrounding the D-backs in segment number 2. And hey, if you need any supplies, the place you want to go is Supply House because get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining supplyhouses.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. And of course, speaking of FanDuel, if you want to place any wagers this season, FanDuel is a spot to go. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more, and you can bet it all on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the ballpark. My favorite thing to do on FanDuel is the same game parlay. Whenever the D-backs are playing, I now do D-backs money line over Corbin Carroll total bases and over Ketel Marte total bases. When it hits, it brings a big smile to my face. And if you want a big smile on your face, visit fanduel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, all right, all right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast and let's take a look at some of the latest FanDuel odds pertaining to the D-backs. Now that we have over a 60-game sample size, the 2020 season's worth of games, let's take a look at some of the latest FanDuel odds and see what they're saying about the Arizona Diamondbacks. We love our friends at FanDuel, but sometimes we don't agree with their odds. Here's a fun one. NL teams to make it to the postseason. Just make it. The Dodgers are not even on this list, along with the Phillies, because both of them have been so incredible this year. And then the Braves are minus 2,800, so they think those 3 teams are a lock. So of those 3, so take away those 3 teams, the D-backs have the 4th best odds to make it to the postseason of the non-Dodgers, Phillies, and Braves teams. The Brewers minus 415, the Padres plus 108, the Cubs plus 136, and then the D-backs plus 175. So they think the Padres are the 2nd likeliest team to make it to the postseason via the wild card. Cubs 3rd most likeliest, and then the D-backs 4th. Right now, it's so close. I'm not going to argue too much. I still think the D-backs are going to finish ahead of at least the Padres or Cubs. I think the Padres are going to make it to the playoffs. That's my prediction. And at least, of course, gets the top wild card spot. I think the Padres get the second or third, and then the D-backs get the other one. I think the D-backs are going to beat out the Cubs, the Cardinals, whoever is in line for that third spot, the Giants. I believe in my heart of hearts the D-backs will beat them out. The Padres are the team that scares me the most in the wild card race outside of the NL East team, of course. The Cubs, I don't fear. We took care of business against them last year to end the season. I think the D-backs can do it one more time if it comes to it. So D-backs plus 175 to make it to the playoffs in the National League. I think that's actually great odds. If you believe, like I believe, the D-backs are going to get a wild card spot, plus 175 is actually pretty good juice for the reigning National League champ. How about win total? If you believe the D-backs are going to win 80 games this season, which again, not a super high mark, but the D-backs have been struggling this year, so it's not like it's going to be easy for the D-backs. They are 30 and 35 on the year, still multiple games below 500, so it's not a complete shock, or excuse me, D-backs are 31 and 35 on the year, 4 games below 500. So it's not a complete shock if the D-backs don't make it to 80 games with don't make it to 80 wins with how we've seen them play this year, but still at minus 160, I like the juice. It's not like it's the best value in the world, but still minus 160, you can still make some good money if you have a lot of faith that the D-backs are going to win. Um 80 games this season, you put $100 down, you're still going to net profit a decent amount of change for you. So I think at minus 160 for the D-backs to win at least 80 games, minus 160 is not too bad at all. And you can still leave the end of the season with some money in your pocket. I don't think it's a bad one at all. When you look at the awards, not the best right now for the D-backs. NL MVP, we're not even going to discuss anyone for the D-backs because they do not have themselves an MVP candidate right now. If you had to choose one, I would say Ketel Marte is probably the D-backs MVP candidate. And surprisingly enough, Ketel Marte is 8th in the MVP bout right now. I think it's more of the fact that the National League is just so weak right now. When you look at the best players, you look at the stats for all the guys, the numbers are not there right now for most of the National League. So Ketel Marte being 8th, I think is more of a product of the weak MVP bout field as opposed to Ketel Marte having himself an elite season, because he is having an elite season. I just don't think it's top 8 MVP voting worthy. Not as good as even his 2019 season. National League Cy Young voting, Zach Gallen plus 3,600. He's not going to win it. Unfortunately, Zach Gallen's probably going to miss too many starts. He's going to miss maybe around 5 starts this season due to injury with those hamstrings. Because of it, Zach Gallen, another season, will have to wait for his Cy Young award. I believe Zach Gallen, at some point in his career, will win the Cy Young, but that season will not be this year. National League Rookie of the Year, Blaze Alexander, still super far down there, plus 10,000. If you think he still has a chance, if you think he's going to play more as the season goes on because his bat is just going to keep him in the lineup at plus 10,000, Blaze Alexander is not a bad bet at all to go lay some money down as a shot in the dark. Let's make some money at the end of the season. You put a few bucks down, and then all of a sudden you put like $5 down. You wake up with 500 at the end of the season. You're going to feel pretty good if Blaze Alexander somehow wins the Rookie of the Year award. And then the final one that I want to talk about, D-backs World Series plus 5,000, Padres plus 4,300. D-backs are right behind the San Diego Padres in the World Series odds. I think that's kind of fun. D-backs are ahead of the Cubs in World Series odds, which I think is right. I'm fine with the Padres being ahead of the D-backs in World Series odds, even though the D-backs are the reigning NL champs. I think eventually the D-backs odds will favor them over the Padres, but not yet. I think the craziest odds on this list is the Kansas City Royals plus 3,900. Not because they're not worth that number, but because it's the Royals and they're actually having a fantastic season where they're worth a plus 3,900. I'm not mad at that number at all. I'm shocked that the Royals are having this good of a season. They were my dark horse entering the year, but they're even blowing away expectations for me. Those are some of the FanDuel odds. D-backs, I think the best value, though, is for them to make it to the playoffs. If you still believe in the D-backs to get a wild card spot, plus 175, that's some good juice that you can wake up on the final day of the year with the D-backs in the postseason. You can see the D-backs in the playoffs and you can win some money. That will be a great day once the regular season ends. Now we'll talk about the panic meter for the D-backs after another week of games in segment number 3. But hey, if you're doing any recruiting, then what you need to use is, of course, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Because are you struggling to close deals? LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high value customers, drive higher revenue, and increase sales performance. Sales Navigator helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals, and shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to convert. Fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform, Sales Navigator gives you the most up to date first party data, enabling you to unlock conversations with the people that matter. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/locked on. That is linkedin.com/locked on for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Just go to linkedin.com/locked on and get started. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast and let's talk about the D-backs panic meter. For the last 3 weeks, I believe their panic meter has been at a 6. And for another week in a row, I'm putting the panic meter at a 6 for the D-backs. They did fine against their NOS opponents. The D-backs needed to come out with at least a above 500 record against their last 2 opponents in the Giants and the Padres, and they were able to do that. You took 2 out of 3 from the Giants, then you split the series against the Padres. Both of those things go a long way in the division and the wild card race. D-backs currently own the tiebreaker over the San Francisco Giants by only 1 game, 4-3. They don't own it over the San Diego Padres, but at least they were able to keep pace, and they're only down 1 game in their season series, 3-4 to the Padres. So D-backs are at least keeping pace with both of them on the season series and are, you know, setting up for a potential wild card race where they can own the tiebreaker over both of those teams. That would be super important. So with the way the D-backs have been playing over the last week, I think we're starting to see some lines, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, with their offense as well. Like the rotation, yes, it's down bad. That's part of the reason why it's a 6. We know the rotation has been hurt, but now you're down Zach Gallen as well. Jordan Montgomery has not been able to find his footing. Ryan Nelson's getting shelled. Brandon Pfaadt has not been as good recently as well. The back end of your bullpen just feels so unstable. Like, the reason it's a 6 is because your pitching feels more flammable than it has the last 3 weeks. The pitching has been a struggle for the D-backs. And of course, we all just want to know why? I mean, we understand why guys like Ryan Nelson struggle, why guys like Logan Allen and Brandon Hughes struggle, but the real reason is we want to know why the baseball gods keep cursing us and make so many of our pitchers hurt. Brandon Pfaadt, 5 earned runs in his most recent start, 4 earned runs the start before that, 4 earned runs the start before that. So he's starting to give up a decent amount of runs over his last 3 games. Nothing terrible, still giving you length in a lot of them and still able to garner strikeouts and look fine in most of those games. But that game against the Padres this past week did give up 3 home runs. That is bad fought. We don't want to see that. We need our rotation to get healthy. Erod could be a few weeks away, so that could be a big boost to this D-backs team once he comes back. Zach Allen doesn't sound like he's going it doesn't sound like Zach Allen is going to be down for too long. It sounds like he should potentially be back after his injured list, little stint. Hopefully that's the case for the D-backs. So could be some signs of life for the rotation looking forward. But the offense, the reason why the number isn't above a 6 is because the offense feels like it's starting to play better as we see the seesaw with the pitching the last few weeks being better than the offense. Now the pitching starting to struggle, injuries starting to creep in. Feels like the offense is starting to step back up. Corbin Carroll feels like he's heating up. I don't know if we're back to 2023 Corbin Carroll, but he feels a lot more comfortable at the plate. The ball is finding the hole a little bit more. He's using his speed to get on base. We'd love to see that. Lourdes Gurriel feels like he's coming through a little bit more in the clutch, still delivering some big RBIs for the D-backs. That is his role. The D-backs need Lourdes Gurriel to deliver some big hits. Gurriel, after Sunday's game, 39 ribbies on the season. He still has a lot of RBIs because of the way he started the season where he was extremely hot for this D-backs team. Gurriel, so important to what the D-backs want to do. Love the fact that he's starting to heat up once again, and that's why the number is at a 6. Pitching has been better. Offense has been down, but now with the seesaw swing the other way, pitching is down. Offense is being better with the D-backs doing just enough against their most recent NL West opponent. We won't move the number up or down. D-backs are still in the same spot after another week of games in the wildcard standings, a game back of the third spot. So because of all those variables, the D-backs still basically being the same team that they were the last few weeks, I can't really move the number off of 6 for the panic meter. D-backs versus Angels up next. Angels, not the best team in Major League Baseball. They have been a real struggle this year. They are one of the worst teams, actually. Second worst record in the American League. And you look at them from a pitching perspective, every year they have been awful. And once again, this season, 2024, second worst ERA in the American League. With no Mike Trout, the vibes are down for the Angels. Should be a series where the D-backs, as we always say, a vulnerable team. If the D-backs want to be good, this is a chance to do that. The biggest problem for the D-backs walking away from that Padres series, consistency, right? One game they look fantastic, the next game they do not. Consistency has been awful for the D-backs, and going against a very vulnerable Angels team, we would love to see the D-backs take care of business against a vulnerable team. But with Jordan Montgomery on the mound, the question is, can he finally deliver us a good start? We'll see in game 1 against the Los Angeles Angels. Of course, we'll talk about it on the podcast right after the game, after the D-backs get a big win Tuesday night. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.